Good morning, everybody. Oh, we are so happy to be here. We have a full crew today, and we're here at the church. Woo! Life is good. All right, I'm Janine Cummings, and this is Mrs. Terry Charles. You guys ready to lift our hearts in praise? Let's do this. Early in the morning, when I rise, I lift my hands in praise because I'm alive. Feel that. Late at night, when I lay down, I lift my heart in praise to the Lord I found, and I sing, ooh, ooh, I started doing even early in the morning, when I rise, I lift my hands in praise because I'm alive. Late at night, when I lay down, I lift my heart and praise to the Lord I found, and I say, ooh, early in the morning, that's when I rise, I lift my hands in praise because I'm alive. And late at night, when I lay down, I lift my heart in praise to the Lord I found. And I sing, for the love I found, for the love I found, for the love I found. We find so much love here.
Ooh, 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 yes. Good morning, everybody. Greg Saltis here, also known as the Unmasked Man. Just so you know, the whole crew is here today. We have everybody, and we are being 6 feet, carefully about our social distancing, 6 feet apart, in case any of you are wondering, like, I thought we were supposed to mask up. Well, we do mask up, but not during the service, but we're keeping our social distancing. I want to welcome each and every one of you to the streaming online service, knowing that wherever you are a part of our church. Unity helps us to accept and appreciate diversity, seeing the light that shines in every one of us so that we can celebrate individual diversity.
Thank you, Greg. And thank you, Terry and Janine, for the beautiful music. Everyone, let's start this service with prayer as Greg lights the Christ candle. We breathe in and breathe out, remembering the truth of that divine light within each of us, that light that always shines, the light that leads the way as we tune into that inner guidance for illumination, for clarity on what is ours to do and what is ours to not do. We know that that light shines brightly in each of us and in every person on the planet. We see our own light in ease, and we see that light in every other person. Regardless of appearance, we know that light is there. We affirm it is present and that God is great. So we say thank you, God, for this awareness, and so it is. Amen.
The daily word today will be read to us by Cynthia Dallas as the representative from the prayer team.
Good morning. The daily word today is will. Spiritual understanding guides my will. Each day I use my will to make decisions, big and small, that affect the quality and direction of my life. Through the use of my human will, I may make choices out of fear or a sense of lack, or I may be driven by desires for convenience, comfort, or the pleasures of the moment. The use of my spiritual will, however, directs my choices towards a greater awareness of my divine nature. As I grow spiritually, I use my will to shine my Christ light even more brightly. I grow in willingness to co-create with God as I release my willfulness to do everything on my own. As I live more intentionally from my divinity, the light of spiritual understanding dawns within me and directs my will. From Joshua 1:9, I hereby command you, be strong and courageous. Do not be frightened or dismayed, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. And our affirmation, once again, is spiritual understanding guides my will. We can say this together. Spiritual understanding guides my will, and so it is.
Thank you very much, Cynthia. This is the time in our service where we get to affirm our statement of faith, and I invite you to join me with our statement of faith. Together, there is only one. There is only one presence and one power in the universe and in my life, God the good, all power, presence, and wisdom. It is in God that I live, move, and have my being, and we know this is so.
I'm gonna stand up. I'm gonna stand up. Oh yes, I'm gonna stand up for my right and be free, be free. I'm gonna speak up. I'm gonna speak up. Oh yes, I'm gonna speak up for myself and be free, 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 and be free. I'm gonna listen. I'm gonna listen. Oh yes, I'm gonna listen to the God that lives in me, 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 lives in me. Let's do that last verse. I'm gonna listen. I'm gonna listen. Oh yes, I'm gonna listen to the God that lives in me, that lives in me, lives in me, lives in me, that lives in me, lives in me, lives in me.
Thank you, Terry. Thank you, Janine. We're so blessed. We're so blessed with lovely music and with the ability to be in this space and have a little togetherness today. So there was a woman who was appearing in front of the judge because of her pending divorce. And the judge was trying to get some more information. And so he said, well, ma'am, can you tell me, please, what are the grounds for this divorce request? And she said, well, about 4.5 acres with a little house right in the middle. And he said, what's the foundation here for this case? And she said, well, I think it's brick and mortar, but there may be some cement there. And he said, no, I'm trying to understand, what are your relations? And she's like, well, I have an aunt and uncle in town, and there's, of course, my husband's parents, and they're all doing fine. And he said, ma'am, do you have a grudge? And she said, no, we've always just had a carport, and that works out really well for us. And finally he says, well, ma'am, does your husband ever beat you up? And she says, well, yes, 2 or 3 times a week, he's out of bed before I am. And finally the judge can't take it anymore, and he says, well, ma'am, I just don't understand, why is it that you want a divorce? And she said, well, I don't want a divorce, my husband does, because he says he can't communicate with me. So our talk today is on conversation skills and oneness. And we know that message sent does not always equal message received. Now in Unity, we talk a lot about oneness, and we know that our second unity principle is that the divine is present in each of us and in each sentient being, each human being here on the planet. And as Unity Truth students, we are not immune from misunderstanding, miscommunication, and at times failing to remember that oneness. And so we're going to talk about ways to bring that oneness out of the church into our daily lives, into our conversations. And some of you may know I'm teaching a class called Conversation Skills starting the last Saturday in July. So I invite you to all join me for that if you're interested in knowing more. I'll also share a couple books that are great reads, whether or not you're able to attend the class. And today we're going to talk about 3 factors that impact our conversation. One is distinguishing between thoughts and feelings. One is questioning the messages I tell myself. And then one is how we use these skills to move ourselves forward. All right, first of all, thoughts and feelings. One of the textbooks for this class is this great classic, Conversation Skills by Marshall Rosenberg. And he discusses ways to distinguish between thoughts and feelings in his book. In Western civilization, we have historically valued thinking over feeling. And so this has some impacts on us as humanity. There may be times that we do not have a very rich vocabulary for feelings. Maybe we know the basics, mad, sad, scared, glad, but we might struggle to come up with more nuanced descriptions of how we're feeling. There may be times that we're so uncomfortable with feelings that we don't even want to acknowledge that they're present. And there may also be times that we mush together thinking and feeling. Recently, I heard an example of this. I was down at the park and I heard a young man chatting with his family, and he said, I feel like you have the best camera for taking pictures. So one test, if we're not sure if something is a think or a feel, is to ask ourselves, can I substitute the word I think in place of what I just said for I feel? I think you have the best camera for taking pictures. Probably a think, not a feel. Here's another way that we mush together thinking and feeling. We might use a feeling type language to blame someone else. I feel left out. Now, left out, according to Marshall Rosenberg, is not a feeling. Let me give you a couple examples. If my best friends in the entire world get together and have a big celebration and they don't include me, I might feel confused, hurt, sad, angry, because I perceive that I've been left out. Now, if a bunch of people from Unity of Olympia are getting together to cook a big meal for a church celebration and they leave me out, I'm going to feel overjoyed, relieved, and grateful because I don't like to cook. So saying something like, I feel left out, might be a way of really blaming the other person for something and not necessarily owning our own feelings. When we want to start having a deeper feeling relationship with ourselves, one tool that I have found that I love is we can go online and we can search for something called Feelings Wheel. And this one is attributed to Dr. Gloria Wilcox. It's so pretty. And in the middle, there's those basics, mad, sad, scared, and glad. But this is a way of gaining greater vocabulary for what am I feeling? I'm feeling energetic. I'm feeling relaxed. I'm feeling resourceful. I'm feeling discouraged, or I'm feeling irritated, or whatever the case may be, if I'm looking for help in identifying what those feelings are. Another technique for knowing if we're really feeling a feeling is, can I replace I feel with I am? So I feel happy, I am happy. And that tells me that I've probably identified a feeling. Now, I want to say, just on a side note, because we know Unity's third principle, thoughts held in mind produce after their kind, that how I think affects my reality, I'm wanting to clarify that this I am test is not for the purpose of affirming something that is maybe uncomfortable. So if I feel angry, I am angry, I might use that as a test to identify the feeling, and I'm probably not going to continue to affirm that. I love what Buddhist author Thich Nhat Hanh says about feelings, where he describes them as, I have sadness in me, I have anger in me, as a way of acknowledging the feeling, but recognizing the whole of me is greater than this transitory experience of having this feeling. All right, so distinguishing between thoughts and feelings. If any of us have ever served on the council's decision-making process is by consensus. And part of the process for the council to get to consensus is for everyone to go around the table and share their thinking and share their feeling. And there's actually a list of feeling words on the table so that we can look at this list and say, well, what am I feeling? Because again, this might be a new stretch, a new practice for some of us to acknowledge those feelings, to come up with a feeling word. Because of our third principle, we do know the power of both thinking and feeling. We know that the thoughts we hold in mind produce after their kind, and the thoughts that we activate through strong emotion, through prayer, through meditation, are the ones that are typically going to express in the outpicturing of our lives. So thinking and feeling. And part of why it's so important to distinguish between these when we're looking at conversation skills is, if I'm not aware of my own emotions, if I'm not mindful and my emotions are driving the car, I'm probably going to get into a car wreck of a conversation. Or if I'm using my emotions to push blame off onto someone else, I feel left out, then I'm probably not setting the two of us up for a great conversation. The second skill we're going to be talking about today for conversation skills is questioning the meaning I assign to stuff. I'm just going to call it stuff. That idea comes out of this great book, which is another book that we'll be using in class, Conversation Skills. And some of you may have heard the description of humanity being described as meaning-making machines. One of the gifts of our humanity is that we look for and assign meaning to the events in our lives. I believe this is a blessing and a gift. And I believe this process of us assigning meaning to the events in our lives is deeply connected to spirituality. It's connected to growth. It's connected to legacy, what we want to leave behind on this planet. And so it's a huge gift and a huge blessing. Now, like many gifts and many blessings, the process of assigning meaning to stuff sometimes has its downsides as well. Because we may assign a meaning to events and the meaning may be wrong. We may assign a meaning so quickly that we don't even realize we've done it. And this is actually a brain function, assigning meaning. It's part of our how we're hardwired as humanity to survive. So we may not realize that we've assigned a meaning to something. And we may fail to question that meaning. We may believe that that is true. Let me give you an example. A while back, I was traveling for work in Eastern Washington, and I saw on the side of the road little memorials to people who had died out on the highways. And I also saw farms with fences and signs about the crops that were growing in those fields. And somehow in my brain, I conflated these two together. And I passed by a fence that had a sign that said alfalfa. And in my head, I started believing that alfalfa was the name of some poor young woman who had died and that this was a roadside memorial to her. And I started getting upset that some parents would name their poor child Alfalfa. That's a horrible name for a girl. Poor Alfalfa was probably teased in school, and then she had a miserable ending on the freeway. And it took me several miles before I realized, oh, alfalfa is actually the crop name, it's not a memorial. So there are times that we make these meanings, we assign these interpretations, and we're not correct. Let me tell you about 2 interpretations I heard just this past week. An interpretation of people who go out in public without wearing a mask. Well, they clearly just don't care about anyone but themselves. An interpretation of people who go out in public and do wear masks. Don't be a sheep. Now, it's important to be aware of the meanings that we're assigning to things. We may not be able to stop our brain from assigning meaning, but we don't have to necessarily believe the first meaning we land on. So if I have thinking going in my head that anyone who's not wearing a mask only cares about themselves and not me, or if I have thinking in my head that anyone who's wearing a mask is being a sheep, I am not likely to have a conversation that's going to be helpful or productive or that's going to express our ideal of oneness with anyone. All right, so using these 2 ideas, separating thought and feeling, questioning the meanings we're assigning in our head, what do we do with those when it comes to conversation skills? We have a process where we can get ourselves back on our feet. If we have been hooked by strong emotions, or if we have started thinking a meaning that is not helpful, we can backtrack from those experiences to get into a better place to have a conversation. And unfortunately, as a spoiler alert for my class, conversation skills is not really about the other person. It's really about working on ourselves. And I'm sure all of us are aware that there may be times when we're in a conversation with someone else where we need to take a break. Maybe we need to step back to get our own mind right, to calm down before we're able to effectively discuss something. Or if we have a really challenging conversation we want to have with someone else, we may need to take time to prepare before we get there. So here's a few things we can do to prepare. First thing, identify what I'm feeling. And me, I go back to this handy dandy feeling wheel. I even saved a copy of it on my phone so I can pull it out and say, well, what am I feeling? If we have strong emotions, acknowledging those even to ourselves can have so much power in helping us make a different choice to get out from being reactive into being responsive. Here's the next thing we do. Ask myself, what is the meaning or the interpretation of stuff I was telling myself right before I felt that feeling? Typically, our feelings don't just happen in a vacuum. We all know that people can experience the same event in multiple ways. And so it's not so much the event itself, it's what our interpretation of it is, what our meaning of it is that causes those feelings. And then backing it up a step further. What did I see? What did I hear? What did I notice right before my brain assigned that meaning and I had that feeling? So let me give you our mask example again. If I'm at the grocery store and I see people not wearing masks and I think, well, they just care about themselves and not anybody else, I might ask myself, what am I feeling? Am I feeling scared, vulnerable, worried? And then I might back it up a step. What was I telling myself right before I had those feelings? Well, in this case, my story is they don't care about anyone else, they care only about themselves. And then I back it up again. What did I see? What did I hear? What did I notice? Maybe I saw a news report that mask wearing doesn't so much protect the wearer as it protects others. Maybe I heard about a neighbor of mine who had to be hospitalized. Maybe I noticed my throat was scratchy this morning and I questioned whether I was coming down with something. And this is an opportunity to apply our third and fourth unity basic principles. We know what we think affects our reality. We know that prayer and meditation are so powerful. So we have an opportunity to change the message. We have an opportunity to say, I see the divine in everything. I see the divine in people wearing masks and people not wearing masks. I see the divine in these emotions coming up in me. I see the divine in my ability to question my own message. And it works the other way too. So if I go to the store and I see people wearing masks and I think, don't be a sheep, then I have the opportunity again to ask myself, what am I feeling? Am I feeling disgust? Am I feeling anger? Am I feeling frustration? And what's the message I was telling myself before I felt those feelings? And in this case, the message, don't be a sheep, or people wearing masks are sheep. And before that, what did I see? What did I hear? What did I notice before I told myself this message? Maybe I saw in the news that someone I didn't vote for issued an order that affects everyone, including me. Maybe I heard about a neighbor of mine who lost their business. Maybe I noticed that I was having some sleepless nights about how I was going to provide for my family and our financial future and whether we were going to be okay. And so again, an opportunity to go back to our third and fourth principle. What can I affirm? What can I hold in prayer? What can I meditate on? And we know too that as part of community, we never have to do this alone. We can call the prayer team, we can call Silent Unity, we can call a friend, and that we take turns holding the high watch for each other when we might be in a place of struggling to hold it for ourselves. In addition to changing our own thinking, we have the opportunity to look at the other person who we want to have a conversation with and apply some of these skills as well. So one of the questions that's asked in this book, which I really like, is if we see someone doing something or saying something that maybe causes us to bristle a little, is asking ourselves, why would a reasonable and rational and decent person do that thing or say that thing? Now I know there's someone out there who's thinking, well, you haven't met my sister's mother-in-law. She's not a reasonable, rational, or decent person. Maybe. And we can always imagine a reasonable, rational, and decent person that we know, who we love, who we know is not perfect. And think about the times we've seen them wig out over something and ask, what was going on for that person when they did that weird thing that they usually don't do? What were they maybe feeling? And a lot of times, if I can take that time to think about the other person, I can understand that maybe they're feeling fear or scarcity or concern or worry. And then I can tune in to that oneness that we know is always present and ask, when have I been the one who felt fear? When have I been the one who felt scarcity or concern or worry? And lead with that idea of oneness in thinking about the conversation I want to have with that person. One last technique that's in this great book is something called start with heart. The idea of thinking about, what do I really want for myself? What do I really want for the other person? What do I really want for the relationship before entering into that conversation? And I have to warn you, this is not an easy practice. Because we know that we are one, if I think things like, well, I want that person to be educated, or I want to raise that person's consciousness, then we have to seriously ask, am I willing to be educated? Am I willing to see the limits of my own understanding and see where I am wrong? Am I willing to learn something that I did not know that I may not feel comfortable learning? Am I willing to have my consciousness raised? Am I willing to see the limits of my consciousness, to see what is not currently in my consciousness, the areas that I am unconscious? Yeah, because what affects one of us affects us all. I wanted to share with you this great quote. It's from Matthew chapter 7, verses 1 through 5. And in the King James Version, I think we've all heard the phrase, "Judge not, lest ye be judged." But I want to read to you the version of this passage from the Message Bible, the one that Reverend Terry uses, where she talks about it's the oldest text translated into modern English, because I think this really shows the power of Jesus's words. And I was laughing a little bit before the service about how in the background here we have the laughing Jesus, and this is not the laughing Jesus saying these words. This was the cranky Jesus. So hang on, everybody. Here's what he said. He said, "Don't pick on people, jump on their failures, criticize their faults, unless, of course, you want the same treatment." That critical spirit has a way of boomeranging. It's easy to see the smile on your neighbor's and oblivious to the ugly sneer on your own. Do you have the nerve to say, "Let me wash your face for you," when your own face is distorted in contempt? It's this whole traveling roadshow mentality all over again, playing a holier than thou part instead of just living your part. Wipe that ugly sneer off your own face, and you might be fit to offer a washcloth to your neighbor. Ouch. And a good reminder, again, that what we see in the other person, what we label in that other person, we are going to experience and receive for ourselves. And so with some of the practices in these books and the practices we're going to talk about in class, we have a way of getting our own mind right and perhaps being in a place where we're able to have that conversation with someone else. I think the term conversation skills is kind of funny because most of the time, what we really need is the ability to be quiet and listen. It's not always so much about what we say. It's our ability to listen and be present and be aware of the divinity in the other person, even if what is coming out may be dressed up in a way that we're not 100% comfortable with. So I do invite everyone to join my class. If you are not able to join, I invite you to check out these fabulous books. And I'd like to just close by saying I really believe that oneness is so important that it is bigger than just Sunday morning. And I think these tools are a way for helping us to bring oneness out into the world. Thank you.
Thank you. What a beautiful lesson today. Let's enter that beautiful meditative space. What is mine to say today? What is mine to say? I'll tune into that still small voice and I'll hear what is mine to say. What is mine to say? I'll tune into that still small voice and I'll hear what is mine to say. What is mine to say today? What is mine to say? I'll tune into that still Yes, I'll tune into that still small voice and I'll hear what is mine to say. So let's just deepen that meditative state. We're going to call forward that beautiful breath of life. So we feel our lungs, feel our bodies. Let's take 3 really deep breaths. Let's just call on that softening. Let's hone in on the sensations and the vibrations in our amazing bodies, head to toe, head to toe. Let's just tune into what's going on. We celebrate our aliveness, celebrate our beingness. We celebrate our God-given ability to be able to tune in to that still, small voice, that divine guidance system that whispers what is ours to say, what is ours to do. Let's take 2 more really deep breaths, nice and slow. Let's place a hand on our heart. I want you to bring forward that burning question that you have right now in this moment. What is it that you want to know? And hold an expectation of hearing as we divinely listen and we divinely receive. I invite you to repeat after me. When I enter stillness, when I ask to receive, I hear the divine whisper that is speaking within me. Let's do it one more time. When I enter stillness, when I ask to receive, I hear the divine whisper that is speaking within me. We have that ability. Let's take these truths into the silence. Sing with me. What is mine to say today? What is mine to say? I'll tune into this still small voice and I'll hear what is mine to say. What is mine to say? I'll tune into that still small voice and I'll hear what is mine to say. Yes, I'll tune into that still small voice and I'll hear what is mine to say.
Thank you, Janine, for the lovely music and the meditation. The entire worship team today wants to welcome each and every one of you to the streaming form of service. We know that you're here by divine appointment and not by coincidence, and we trust that this form of service during these unusual times is feeding your spirit. Together we can continue to hold the high watch for the good of our planet, our church, and everyone on that planet. If you're not already a member of Unity and you'd like more information, please feel free to go to our website. On our website, you can fill out the guest survey, and we will give you more information. Go to the guest survey and click on the Contact Us tab, and we would be happy to provide more information for you. This week's announcements, we want you to join us, including those newcomers who may be tuning in. We have a lot going on. As always, we have the affirmative prayer circle going on. We have the Community Connection, which is our Wednesday alternative service. Now, as Audrey mentioned, on July 25th, she will be beginning her course. And, she said she doesn't like to cook, but I feel like she served up a pretty good hors d'oeuvre today. And the main course will be coming in the course. We have to sign up for that, so registration is required. Please join her in that program. Also, I want to really encourage you to check out our youth videos. They've been put together by Lisa Petrich, our youth ed instructor. And the lesson this week is by Nathan Aswell, and it is Release and Affirmations. These are really fun. I want to talk a little bit about the Wednesday trip over to the Martin Way shelter. This has been an absolutely fabulous outreach. And our community coordinator, Kathy Evans, tells me that July is totally full now, and she is looking for volunteers to provide food for those people over at the homeless shelter in August. You can contact her. She is at communitycoordinator@unityofolympia.org. So please feel free. I've participated a couple times. It's a really good feel-good thing. It's one of the ways that we can reach out to our community, which I believe is one of the things that we here at Unity really believe in and want to do. Okay, please join us right after the service for our community fellowship time on Zoom. If you got the newsletter yesterday, the link is on there. If you are not a member of our newsletter, you can go to unityofolympia.org and just click on the media tab and then the newsletter tab, and you can sign up, and you too will be receiving the newsletter about everything that's going on here at our church, and you can get the link to our fellowship Zoom meeting. Conscious contribution. I'm happy to report that the church continues to receive contributions, and for that we are very grateful. It is a show of our prosperity, and I want to encourage you to continue to donate and support our church home so that we can continue to provide these services and also this important message that we have for those who really need to hear it. I know many of you are electronic contributors like I am, and some of you send your checks in, whatever that may be. We want to encourage you to continue. You can always give online by going to unityofolympia.org. There's a donate button there, and you can also donate by phone at 360-234-2669. However you give, I'd ask you to now consider your gift and let us bless it with divine love. I invite you to join me with divine love. Together, please. Divine love, through me, blesses and multiplies all that I am, all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive. Open to the sacred richness of our infinite source, we as Unity of Olympia joyfully co-create unlimited prosperity right now. Thank you, God.
And I know that we usually close with a blessing, but I feel
Thank you, Janine. Thank you, Taylor. So lovely. We have some upcoming guests that we're looking forward to being blessed with. Their profiles are on our website and in the newsletter, so I hope you check that out. And let's go ahead and close now with the prayer for protection. So please join me. The light of God surrounds us. We are light of God. The love of God enfolds us. We are love of God. The power of God protects us. We are power of God. And the presence of God watches over us. We are presence of God. Wherever we are, God is, and all is well. Amen. Bless you.